I'm Charlie Peters, and you're listening to The Truth in This Art with host Rob Lee.
Hey, welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, the Rob Lee. El Gordo Frito. I don't know. Today, I'm privileged to be in conversation with the Baltimore-based photographer and the founder of Studio 87, which is a photo studio, art gallery, and multi-use space with a mission to create and serve infinitely. Please welcome Willis Aybar. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I hope the whole Gordo Frito thing doesn't catch on, because then if random people on the streets are calling me Gordo Frito, I'm like, all right, it's over. I've burnt this market. I got to go elsewhere.
That could be my nickname too, man. I'll take it, because we eat Gordo Frito all the time. So
That's great. That's great. So as we get started, I want to start off like very, very like introductory. It's a way to kind of get folks comfortable. So what's the Willis Aybar story? And ultimately, how'd you get into photography, running like 9,000 businesses? I think you were saying earlier. I think that was the number. Maybe 8,999. I'm not sure. But tell me about that. What's the story, and ultimately, how'd you get into photography and ultimately like in business?
For sure. I think it all starts. I'm originally from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, New York. And I lived there till I was around 20 years old or so. And I remember seeing a photo about a year ago. Somebody took a photo of me taking a photo with a flip phone. And that photo was dating back into like 2003. And when I saw it, I was already, in business and already serving clients and doing photography work. And it made me realize like, oh, wow, this is where it all, like, I didn't start right there, but it all started with the passion to document. So I was documenting life before I knew what photography even was, before I knew that there was an industry, before I knew what any of these settings were or anything like that. So I've been documenting for a very long time. And I moved to Baltimore in Christmas Eve, 2008. So, and I will never forget it. It's such a prime moment, because the day I moved here, I was fine. I was perfect. My dad drove in his Lincoln Town car. He was already living in Baltimore. Yeah. Drove all the way to the projects in Brooklyn. We packed all our stuff up, put it in the car, drove all the way back. I was fine. It was a decent day. I had already decided, all right, that's it. I'm leaving New York for good. It is what it is. Got to Baltimore and I purged, like my whole body purged, like the whole nine. And the next day I woke up and I was fine. It was the weirdest thing ever, but I will never forget it for that. Like my body was just like, hey, new beginnings, welcome. And long story short, I met, I have a lot of family here. So family introduced me to more people. Mm-hmm. And as I started getting introduced to more folks, I got in contact with some people that had a recording studio. Yeah. The recording studio was on the second floor of a barbershop on Eastern Avenue in Highlandtown. And I was already doing music. It's like the average thing. Like if you're in New York, like you either spitting bars or you're
making beats.
You're making beats, or you're playing basketball, you know what I mean? So I definitely followed that route, and I love hip hop, and I'm a part of the culture forever. So I was making music, got connected with folks here. They introduced me to the owner of the barbershop, who also owned a recording studio. And I was in there so much, I eventually became a barber as well. But then I was like also around creative folks that were making music and things like that. So for some reason, I don't remember the exact reason why, but I ended up buying my first camera during this time. And it was also to like document the stuff that was going on in the shop and upstairs in the studio. And then eventually I ended up finally getting a real DSLR later down the line. And I started dibbling and dabbling. I didn't know what I was doing still. I still didn't understand. And later down the line was when I really, started to get into the business side of things. But that's the short of it.
No, thank you. Thank you. Let's see. Was it hand talk? I don't know why I thought it was
man,
that.
Don't tell me, Rob. Don't tell me I cut your hair back in the day, man.
You may have. Me and my brother, we would go there. We had the unfortunate hairlines as we talk about, and I was like, "Yo, it's either Dominicans or Puerto Ricans that's cutting my hair. That's just what it is at this point." And I was like, "They're the best with razors. That's just what that is." And my brother was like, "You're not wrong." So that's where we were going. And I'll just put it this way: I enjoy baseball, and I know that Orioles players are going in to get their hair cut. So if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. So yeah, that's
funny.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think being around in multiple scenes, like you have those kind of like those scenes that kind of come together. You know, the hip hop scene kind of comes together in the barbershop. You have those conversations, and obviously people want to look good because they wouldn't be in a barbershop otherwise. And I think you maybe pick up certain things just being in there in that environment, and it's a way to get you to kind of understand what's going on, like in a new scene or what have you. You move into a new town, you're like, all right, what's going on here? Who's doing what?
And I didn't know it. And I mean, like back in the days, I used to go to the barbershop, but we lived in a project, so we didn't have money. I used to cut my own hair.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a lot of barbershop experience till I got to Baltimore. I also didn't have a lot of Dominican experience. And I was born in the Dominican Republic. I'm a naturalized citizen, but my family's Dominican, sure. My immediate family, my whole family, right? But I didn't really be around Dominicans until I got to Baltimore, which is funny because in Baltimore, I mean, like I didn't know there was such a huge Dominican community here, but there is. And in New York, all my friends are Black. I had one. My best friend was a Puerto Rican, and I had maybe a few Dominican folks outside of family that I was interacting with, but none of my circle was Hispanic. So I come here and then I just get dove into like this very deep, culture-rich Dominican community. And I didn't know, it just hit me like a wrecking ball. I was just like, whoa, I didn't even understand the language, the lingo. I had to, but you're right. Yeah. Being in the barbershop, I was cutting Orioles players' hair, and I don't watch TV. So for me, like, I didn't know who Alex Jones was.
Yeah.
And until I got a $50 tip, and I'm just like, whoa, who's this person? And do you know who you just cut? I was like, oh, I had no clue. So
yeah. It was this guy I was really cool with, dude named Oscar. He was my barber for a while, Dominican dude or what have you. And I just remember going to a spot and I was just being embedded into like just culture that wasn't mine. So I was like, yo, thank you for the invitation. I remember one time, and again, razors, right? I remember one time he pulled out the Wild Mama Juana and he was like, yo, we drinking this. And I just knocked it back. He's like, yo, we slow sippers here. I was like, I'm glad you are, because you got a razor, my guy. Like, let's just, I was like, we're good here. But I think that's where that cultural exchange is at. And to bring it to like the podcasting front, right? I ended up connecting with one of his friends who was a Bruja, and we ended up doing an interview in the back. I was doing this podcast about relationships at the time, and she wanted to talk about the magic in like relationships. And we did that in the back of the barbershop because they were doing multiple things. They had like this barbershop section in the front, and then towards the back, they had a place for like music. And his wife, who's the co-owner, she was also like a physical therapist. So you had a lot of different things. It was a huge space. And they made the most out of it.
Yes, it's the hustle, right?
Hell yeah. So I want to talk about this. So for you, like you mentioned coming from New York, and you mentioned coming down here and some of that kind of introductory work. Tell me about a life experience to kind of shape your creative sensibility. Like, you know, some people, they try to find a way to do more with less. And that may come from like, I'm from the projects as well. It might come from like being there or having a certain work ethic. Might come from, you know, I just want to keep my ass off the streets or whatever the thing is. I don't want to fall into these traps. So tell me about like maybe a life experience to help shape your creative sensibilities.
I think my hard work comes from my dad. I have 3 younger brothers, so it's 4 boys. And I don't know how my parents did it, but they did. And they did a great job. But my dad was the sole provider.
Yeah.
Took care of my mom, took care of all my brothers and myself. And he was out before we woke up. And by the time he got in, he had to go to bed. And, you know, we were already in bed. So that's the type of work ethic that was a foundation, regardless if I knew it at the time or not. That software was already being uploaded. So the work ethic, I think, is what I carry on to this day on that side of things. Now, on the creative side, I don't know where that came from because my parents aren't creative, and nobody in my family was artists of any kind. But I think growing up in the melting pot, right, in New York, and having all these experiences around me at all times, and all this culture. And I think some of that kind of was installed in through the process. And then I don't know how I merged all of that, but I will say that I've been a seeker. I was like a natural born seeker. I've always seeking and always an extremely curious person. And I want to go learn XYZ about whatever. Started with graffiti, got arrested for graffiti, my work was always on the bulletin boards in elementary school when it came to art. I was just always very creative, and I just loved just creating, period, whether it was with music, with the paintbrush, with the marker, right? And then eventually, for some reason, the camera became that thing for me where I always have like 3 cameras on me at all times, by the way.
Always got that thing on me.
Always got it on me, man. There's one right here. There's cameras everywhere.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
And I love documenting. And I think that then evolved into, getting into the wedding industry and documenting folks' most important days of their lives and taking that extremely serious and trying to produce the best product possible for them. And until now, we've been a part of some hundreds of families' lives, throughout the years. So it's been a very beautiful thing. But no, I don't have any specific, pinpoint of anything that changed anything for me. But I think just the curiosity drove everything to where it's at today.
Yeah, I think there is some similarities there with myself, like just kind of, I like capturing stuff. I tell a story on occasion of just being a jerk in high school, having the little click mic joint, the little click recorder. And I was speaking in the third person like I was The Rock. Don't judge it. And it's like, yeah, so The Rob is here that's literally what I was saying. And
The Rob.
In interviewing people like, hey, how was this year? How was this first year in high school? And I was in a, pretty, high achieving high school. And, a lot of people didn't make it out in terms of didn't have the grades. So being able to kind of document it and not knowing at that time that this was, me kind of doing this proto podcast thing and not sure how I got a recorder. It just happened to be around. I will say that, my parents aren't artists or creative in that way, I suppose. But when it came down to trying to foster that for me, they always were supportive in that. Not sure what you're doing, but I can buy you some color pencils. I can buy you an art book, and things of that nature. When it comes to doing the podcast stuff, which I've been doing almost 14 years, people not sure what the hell they're getting. It's like, is this mic good? Are these cables good? I'm like, nah, just give me that Amazon gift card or what have you, or a Sweetwater joint.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, that's where I'm at. That's the thing that drives it. But, it's also, again, what you were touching on, where having multiple interests and also like, what is the through line between those? Like, I went from drawing and doodling to writing short stories, fiction, and getting something off of that. And eventually that led to me writing rhymes. We'll talk about that at a different time. Yeah, it was something. And it then kind of eventually, in the background, what was the through line? This desire to be heard, this desire to want to get down to the nooks and crannies, to get into the weeds about a particular thing. And this happens to be the subject matter at this point. For a while in the whole podcast lane, I was covering weird news stories that people often don't talk about. And I would try to elicit humor out of that. That was what the crux of that was. But ultimately, all of it was that curiosity and then that desire to share this sort of story that nobody's talking about this, and be able to share that. And so it brings me to this. I don't want to belabor it too much. So, for the fine folks listening, could you describe how Studio 87 came about and, some of the things that you really dig about being in photography?
Of course. Studio 87, I tell folks it was a natural progression.
Sure.
I didn't have ideas of having a space or anything of the sort, but my friend Katie, at Capture Photography, she's an amazing Baltimore photographer and documentary filmmaker. She had opened a space, and beautiful space, by the way. Then our friend Amy and Jesus, they opened up a little photo studio as well. And I was watching them, visited their studios and experienced them. And it was like, I love that, but I couldn't see myself shooting 5 families to then pay the rent every month. It wasn't going to mix that way. So lo and behold, one day, I'm sure you probably heard of Earn Your Leisure. Mm-hmm. The podcast network, and I listened to the Earn Your Leisure guys and financial investments. I mean, during the pandemic, that's when they really blew up, and they were for the culture. They were providing us all this information, all these gems on how to invest our money and how to buy these businesses or build businesses. And I was already looking for the next thing. Like, what else am I going to do? Mm-hmm. And having all the inspiration around, I saw this YouTube episode that they had, and it was about how to make a fortune with event spaces, and that's exactly the name of it. If anybody wants to go check it out, I saw this YouTube episode and I was fired up. I left the tab open, as probably all of us do. It's got 1,000 tabs, but I left the tab open and I was like, you know what? Like, I can't do this right now, but I'm going to watch it again later. Literally 2 weeks later, I'm closing out tabs. I find a tab again. I watch the entire episode. I'm so fired up once again. I call a few people. I ask a few questions. 2 weeks later, I had the LLC filed, and this is in July of last year, and by September, I had the keys. So I say it was a natural progression because all the inspiration that I already had, all of that rolled into getting this last straw of inspiration, and then that then snowballed into what it is today. So it is a My Photo Studio and art gallery, and originally the purpose was to help promote the artwork that we're already creating. I have a bunch of photographers in my network. We're always creating together, and for other clients and businesses as well. But at the same time, I needed more income from this thing. This thing had to pay for itself, right, on the business level. Yeah. And that's where the event space piece came in. Even as soon as I started uploading photos of it on the internet, folks were just like, "Can I use my baby shower there? Can I do this there? Can I do that there?" And then that just opened up the floodgates for everything else that has come since. And since then, I've been embedded into the Dundalk community, working with a lot of nonprofits in Dundalk, family crisis centers in Dundalk. And we've even had the Dundalk Elementary School 5th grade class march down inside Studio 87 because they weren't able to do it at their school. So that was a beautiful thing to see. That the kids got their cap and gowns on, and they walked down, and the teacher came out, and the parents, and I mean we made a little auditorium out of the space, and it was beautiful. But then, being able to serve people in that way, aside from just being a place of business, like was amazing. So I tie all of that in with photography and being creative every day. On our windows on the outside, and shout out to Caroline, I have "Do What You Love" in big letters. She did have like a little mural outside of the space. And I wanted to let the Dundalk community know that, but then also Baltimore as a whole, like, I got here and I've accomplished this because I did what I love along the way. And I think we'll all live more fulfilled and better lives if we did that, if we did follow what we love and did a little bit more of what we love, and then add a little bit of business into it. And then, here we are. So
thank you for putting that out there. I love that. And yeah, I think I think when you realize that you want to do something that you love, and then there's that reminder, like I've mentioned this in the past, I have, that little like fake marquee thing that people have that you put the letters in, you can swap them out. I kept the same one up there that leads into the studio, "What is real?" And it's kind of this reminder of, if you do a bad interview, that's a bad interview. If you do a good interview, that's a good interview. It's not an indictment on you being good or bad. None of that's real. It's just what you're doing at that next moment. So don't really believe the hype, and don't believe when you're at your lowest. And it reminds me that I'm doing this not for those things. I'm not doing this to do a good one or a bad one or whatever. I'm doing it because I love doing it. I enjoy doing it. I get something out of it. So yeah, that's great. So I got three more real questions. And so let's see. Well, I think it's actually just two, because I think I have a sense of it. But how do you know when you're looking at an image? Let's put this photography lens on this real quick, which maybe in a pun. how do you know when an image is good, an image is great, or an image doesn't work? What are you looking for within it? And maybe that's a gauche question, but I think, like, what are you looking for within an image to know if it's like really high quality? Not everyone, there's a lot of people with cameras can't do good shots. Obviously, you're not one of them. You're doing good ones. So tell me about that. Tell me about the quality.
Like you said, I never let that get to my head because Gary Vee says this all the time, but you're only as good as your next at bat. So my next client and how happy they are after the session, did they have fun? Did they enjoy themselves? Are they thanking me profusely? Are they then uploading the photos to their accounts online and tagging and all that? You know what I mean? That to me is like, okay, that was a successful shoot. And when it doesn't happen, I don't let it get to me either. But it's an interesting thing because it is subjective in that way, where I could think the image is fire, and then the client chooses to upload a whole different image as their profile picture. It was part of the session, but the one I thought was like, the shot, they uploaded a whole different one. I think it's always going to be a mixture of lights and shadows and composition and subject matter, right? I think those things truly make up what that image is at the end of the day. What stands out about it? Does it strike an emotion? Does it evoke an emotion in the person? Mm-hmm. I go by when I'm creating, I go a lot by emotion. It's not really the technical aspects of it. Any photographer can tell you that after some time, the camera settings are something you don't even think about anymore. And the cameras lately are so good that you can see exactly what the image is going to look like before you even snap away. So it's not really that. It's truly your eye at that point. It's not really like the settings. I mean, sure, we can get into lighting and strobes and modifiers and all that good stuff. But at the core of it, like it's truly you and your eye and what you see and what you believe is interesting and how do you document that piece? So I don't know. I have a lot of throwaways, obviously, like photographers have so many throwaways. We only choose a very, very small sliver of the photos that we take to share with the world. And I think that we have to be that selective, and we are as artists that hard on we're our worst critics in that way. But again, it's subjective. I could say a photo's fire. Somebody else could say another photo's fire. And, both of those might not be fire to the third person. So.
Yeah, I've had conversations with curators, with artists, and, we talk about this kind of like the technical stuff is in there. People know what they're doing from a technical standpoint, but what's the feelings attached to it? What is it saying? What is it doing? What is it drawing out of a person? Like, I could have sat here and did a very standard, so tell me about your business and tell me about your work. But there's nothing else in there. There's no personality in there. It's really technical. Here's the facts and let's move on. And it feels flat, and there's a version of that sort of flatness in whatever a person is doing. So it has to be done off of the things that they don't teach you. The things that, technically you're not going to find out on youtube.com. It has to come from the talent that's there. That's the thing that separates it. Maybe the choice, maybe the lighting, maybe it's just saying right there. I got it. And sometimes, like, I'm not always a person that takes direction. So in those instances where, because I've done a few photo shoots recently, I'm like, all right, does this make sense? Is this good? Yeah, trust me, bro, I got it. And it's like I have to trust the person's eye. And But then when I see it afterwards, I was like, oh, that's fire. And he's like, that's not even a good one. And I'm like, okay, cool. I don't know, bro. Like, whatever. And just trusting in it. And that's the thing. Like, I think when you're in this sort of creative to client relationship, it's really like, look, trust me. I know what I'm doing. I'm good at this. And I think, yeah.
It's a different ballgame when you're working for a client, though, because the work that I create personally and I create every day, I'm a daily practitioner.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of photographers out there that only create when they have a client. And it's like, I think there's two different types when you're talking about that. Like there's the person that only does it when somebody asks them to do it. And then there's the person that does it for free every day, no matter what, and then still creates for the client. I think that those are two different sets of eyes. And I think for me, I have the other set of eyes. I don't know how many photos I shot today, but I shot several. Yeah. And, there's that documentation piece that comes into play. but yeah, for when you're working with the client, sometimes that love does, you have to diminish it. You have to work toward results. And I think that when you are getting into the business of photography and you actually want to make money or even a living from it, then yeah, at that point you have to work toward results. When I'm working for an e-commerce brand, I'm working toward how can I make sure that these photos get this commerce brand more business, period. I don't care about my artistic taste at that point. It's not even that. It's about driving results. Or if I'm shooting a wedding, it's about how can these people love these photos 20 years from now. I'm shooting into the future when I'm documenting these things, you know? So, at that point, I have to step into the client's shoes and to produce some of that work. But I love it. I love it no matter what. So, and I think that's what keeps it going every day.
Yeah. And as a person that's gotten into the spot where now people want someone that's in that storytelling space, which that's where I'm living at this juncture, I kind of rally against that at times where it's just like, articulate what you need. Do you need me as a person that's a avatar for you, which is different than you want me to host a thing? And because if you want me to host it, and it's funny because some of the clients that I've worked with, it's like, can it be both? It's like, those are different things. I wouldn't ask that question that you gave me to ask, or I can do some version of it, but it is, I think, rooted in it is communication. It's big on communication, because it's like you want this person they want you for a reason. But also it's like, I want you to interpret the thing that I want. It's like, you can hire someone who's not as good at this then, or someone who's not doing it in this way. And, it's that type of conversation that goes into like the intake and how communication happens. But, doing it every day and being that person that's operating, and it's just like, look, I love doing this. If someone ever comes to me and it's like, when's the last time you put on a microphone? And it's been like a while, that's an issue. I should be turning on this microphone, recording something. And the first words I say in a day shouldn't be me talking to you. I should be on the mic earlier. I should be doing something else that I'm using this, checking levels, making sure I don't sound scummy. So I got one last question before I get to these rapid fire ones. And I like hearing about because I think when we're out here, we're doing the hustle, we're learning, we're in this DIY space, which is really big here. And, just working off of passion and to a degree obsession, you pick up complementary skills. So what sorts of complementary skills have you picked up outside of photography that actually help you with photography? And what other talent would you most likely want to add to this toolkit of yours?
I think customer service is so crucial. We have across all of my businesses, we have a perfect 5-star rating on multiple platforms on each. And I have to attest that to customer service it's tough, but we're involved. We're in a city where we're rugged, right? And it's rugged in New York as well. And you go to places and sometimes you don't get treated like how you would like to be treated, or you don't get greeted, or, and it happens every day, whether you're making a phone call, whether you're sending an email, whether you're sending a text, whether you're going in person. And I think that's everything. So what I learned from my professional career is that working in operations teams and managing a customer service team is so crucial to how you interact with every single customer, how consistent that interaction is, and how you make them feel throughout that process. So for me, customer service is above and beyond. I do unto others as you would like done unto you. That's the same level of service that I provide day in and day out. And I think that's a complimentary service to all of my businesses across the board. Problem solving, I think, is incredibly crucial. Being able to solve problems on the fly. A photographer is an image maker, but a photographer, more than anything, is a problem solver, because we're put into situations where we have to go and create no matter what the circumstances are. And ultimately, being a problem solver is what helps me do my job the right way and helps me serve my clients. So problem solving. And I think I would like to add to the toolkit. That was the last piece of the question, right? I love writing, but I don't think I'm really good at it. But I would love to add that piece of the storytelling into it, whether I would be writing screenplays or scripts. and copywriting as well for sales and business. So, because that's the whole other side of me. If you follow me on Twitter, I'm either talking about powerlifting, I'm either talking about photography, or I'm talking about business. Period. Those are my three main subjects. Like, so I love lifting heavy, but I love being able to communicate properly and especially with words. I work with a lot of other businesses and clients, helping them make sales and helping them build their websites and get their landing pages correctly and all that good stuff. So copywriting is at the top of the list, and I'm constantly working on that. Like, you know, so yeah, I think that would be one I would add to the list.
Powerlifting, huh? Interesting. Yeah, I got to get into it.
Yeah, you got to get into it. Come with me, man. Come to Golds and Dundalk.
I'm just all arms and legs, my guy. It's just like I'm 6'4", man. Like it's sometimes I see these dudes, these little 5'8" dudes, like just grunting their way through life, and I'm like, look.
That's me.
Oh no! It's like
that's me.
Sometimes I get bored with lifting, but then at the same time, it's like, all right, I just got into dips recently, so I'm like, okay, this is great. But yeah, you know, I might have to take you up on that. And also, thank you for sharing those kind of complementary skills, because I think, you know, it's something that's more robust, and having like the photography there, because you'll have people who have great writing but no great visuals to accompany it. And I think that for maybe the type of writing, it can be like, I could start off with blogs, and then now you have like really dope imagery to go along with it, and they're complementary. And then it's like, well, let me do this screenplay. And then suddenly, I'll be the DP for this. I know what pictures we're needed. I know I'm using my eye here. And then suddenly you're a director, and it's like, oh, humble beginnings. And now look where you're at. I can see it now. Sir. And a year from now, it's just like, oh, Willis Aybar, director. It's like, shit, what do we got?
I love that, man. Yes, sir.
So I want to hit you with some rapid fire questions. I've been, while I've been looking down, like I always tell people, like I'm paying attention, but I am also like editing as I go along, because I got more questions to ask you in the rapid fire portion here.
Okay, let's go.
So, and keep this in mind, where, we don't want to get too lost in the weeds here. Whatever comes to mind, don't overthink it. All right. What is your most useful photographic mantra? Like, when you're going into it, what is on your mind and how you're approaching like doing a shoot?
I guess I'm going to attest this to the most high pressure filled days, which are weddings. You only got one shot to get it right.
I dig it.
That's it. And that's what I tell my team. And we have a huddle right before going in. We only got one shot to get it right. You got to be there. We got to be here. Boom, boom. It's like military style. When we're going in there, it's definitely orchestrated to that degree.
What is your current phone background?
My son. It's my son. It's Mr. Willis Aybar. And I can't see him right there, but he's in the pool.
Nice.
He's just in the pool with his goggles on right there. Yes, sir.
I love it. You're an accomplished person. You're self-made in this regard, and you're doing a lot in a short period of time. So big shout out to you. Right now, absolutely. Right now, what would you say your biggest accomplishment is? What you're most proud of?
Being able to balance it all and perseverance.
Okay.
Because there's some days where you just like, it's a lot. And people tell me all the time, Willis, why you take on so much? Why are you doing so much? Why don't you niche down X, Y, Z? But this is my purpose. This is why I was put here. I'm a creative and I'm a seeker and I'm curious. I'm going to go chase and discover and explore as much as I possibly can. I recently got into film photography about a year ago. So now I have like 7 film cameras too. So I'm also exploring medium format and 35 millimeter. And I'm just, creating in different ways. I recently got into search engine optimization, and Studio 87 is showing up on page 1 on Google for over 64 keywords. So the technical side of that, like, I don't know. I just love diving into things and exploring and diversifying my knowledge base and persevering, because it's not easy. Like, you take this route, you got to be prepared to come with everything that comes with it. And it gets really difficult sometimes, but I wouldn't have it any other way. So once you go entrepreneur, you don't go back.
That's wise. I love it.
Yeah.
Now it might be a few. It might okay. These next two are going to be interesting. Do you want the more ridiculous one first, or do you want the?
Yep.
Okay. Going back to your haircut day. Going back to your haircutting days. Beijing or no?
I would say no. And I'm gonna say something is a hot take, and there's some folks. I shave everything off. So I'm gonna just say this to not to yourself, but to all the men out there. Look, this is at some point that arrives that we have to accept it, and I think that we have to accept it. Sometimes we should accept it way earlier.
Yo, that's hilarious. Oh my God.
I go to the barbershop still because I support all of my barber friends, and there's about 5 barbershops that I frequent just to say hello and touch base with my guys. But I still take my son. I know how to cut hair. I've done it for 6 years. I still take my son into the barbershop. I want him to have that experience. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think guys, we should accept it. We should accept it earlier than
I remember when I first did it, I was going there, and this is just me being lazy at this point because I was trying to get my beard back, and my man's made fun of me. I came from, it was some Hispanic festival that was in Highlandtown, and my man pulled up on me. He was scooped me up, and he was like, "You're bald with this mustache." He was like, "What the hell are you doing? Like, where were you? What caricature were you?" Because it was very thick mustache. I'm trying to just even things out, and then I would just shave my head again. But I remember in the beginning of the pandemic, I just let it grow for the most of the time because my barber had moved to my Dominican barber moved to New Mexico and then just went off the map. So I didn't have a barber, which is a crisis, right? And I let it grow for a while, and my hair is thin, so it started slicking back naturally. And my girl was like, "What is this Lester Holt thing that you're doing?" I was like, "Yo." She was like, I mean, I like it. She was like, but also, she's like, Lester Holt with the Cooper virus. What are you going for? What's the aesthetic? And I was like, look, it's life. It's life is the aesthetic. So here's the last question I got for you.
Yeah.
And this is the first time this question has been in here, but I think it could be interesting. Maybe, as a photographer, you may have a different take on it. Do you believe in ghosts?
I think so. Look, the government is coming out with all these UFO files, and everything's public now. I believe they've been real before they said they were real, and I believe that there's so much out there that there's dimensions, and we could get into psychedelics if you want, but it's a whole I believe there's a lot out there, so I definitely believe in those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mentioned the photography angle to it because I've heard stories of people saying, "Oh, I see a ghost in the background of this picture," and I was just like, "Has there been an instance, my guy?" Because it's a thing. It's something about when you have cities that are very old. It's in things that have happened in said cities. It's hard to just dismiss that. At least energy. Let's just go with that. Not even ghosts. Let's just say energy. Because it's never created or destroyed. It's just transferred. So I don't know. Just putting it out there.
I mean, I haven't had an instance where that happened with me, but there's just been instances where you take photos of folks and they're no longer here. And in a way, if you think about it, it's like you have captured that person, but is it? I don't know. Is it real? Is it not? They're still here, but they're in this photo. I don't know. So, if we want to we can get twisted.
I feel like there's going to be a different podcast that comes out. Ghost Stories, Photography Edition. So, one, I want to thank you for coming onto this podcast. This has been a treat. And two, I want to invite and encourage you to tell the fine folks where to check you out, where to visit Studio 87, all of the good stuff, social media, all of that good stuff. The floor is yours.
Appreciate it. Everybody, the best place to reach me right now, I'm very heavy on Twitter. I almost exclusively stopped using Instagram. However, at Willis Aybar on everything. And Baltimore Studio 87 is where you can find the studio. The studio is located in Dundalk. We're open 7 days a week. We are by appointment only. We're available for art galleries. That's those type of events that we love the most. We want to support the artist community. So we had a young lady do a very, very interesting art exhibit in the space very recently. That was pretty interesting and eye-opening, the stuff that she came up with and the things that she did. We've had art galleries in the space, of course, always do photo shoots and productions and all that good stuff. And we're open to collaboration as well.
So there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Willis Aybar for coming on to the podcast. And I'm Rob Lee, saying there's art, photography, community in and around Baltimore. You just got to look for it.